All right, I think we are live. All right, Janice, I see that you're in here. Have we started? All right, I see Jessica. Hello, Jessica. How's it going? Unfortunately, I can't see everyone who's in here, but it appears that we are live. I see that there are 9 people looking. All right. All right, so I guess we're coming in loud and clear. Now, StreamYard is a little bit different. I thought there was going to be I'll be able to see who's actually in the broadcast, but that appears not to be the case. So it's going to be I'm going to have to monitor chat really, really well. Um, so there's Janet. So yeah, when we get into it, if you have any questions, make sure you're posting them in chat so that way I can go ahead and answer them. I guess that's going to be how we communicate. So I guess we're going to work out the initial technical difficulties here. All right. Oh, there you are, Janet. And there you went. All right. So I will do my own introduction. Hello, everyone out there. I am so happy that you could join me. My name is Brent Solomon. A little bit about my background. I am a teacher here at Four Geeks Academy. I've been teaching coding in some form or fashion actually for about 3 years now. The time has flown. Um, I've taught at previous boot camps. I'm very happy to be here and a part of Four Geeks and what they have going on. Um, I am a boot camp graduate also. So that's why I have such a passion, for the boot camp model. Because I don't think I wouldn't be where I'm at, today, without having, instructors and mentors, who cared, and salt, for me to be successful in whatever role, you know, whatever future role I would obtain. So I'm here because of awesome teachers and mentors, right? I'm really big on paying it forward. I do love being a part of the growth and development of future developers. People with getting into this career field that I love so much. Like being able to help guide you on this initial part of your journey is so fulfilling, and I love it. So a little bit more background. Right now, I'm an engineer with AWS. Specifically, I am on the Kendra team. AWS is huge, huge. If you've ever did any kind of deep dive into all the tools and offerings of AWS, you see that that list is expansive. So me specifically, I am on the AWS Kendra team. Kendra is their Amazon's machine learning search engine offering. Um, so I'm very happy to be on that team. It is a newer team, so there it is very busy. It keeps me um, there's always something to do. But I enjoy it. I enjoy learning. And I enjoy being part of what I feel like is like the ground floor of developing what ultimately is going to turn into a really really great offering from AWS. Um, yes, I am a military veteran. So getting out of the military, I actually went into accounting, for a bit, and then that's not where my heart lied. So, I actually went, through the boot camp, some coding boot camps, and I'm now am and now I'm at Amazon, which is really really awesome. Please forgive me. I am a little bit under the weather today, so my voice may come across a bit nasally. My apologies there. COVID is still going around. Um, so yeah, apologies there. Also, if for any reason I lose connection, just hang on tight and I will be right back. I promise you. All right. So that's my initial introduction. So tonight, the plan is we are going to work on a to-do list using vanilla JavaScript, which is really awesome. I am going to speed up the process a little bit by not constructing my own CSS. I will be using Bootstrap, right? So the plan is just your basic run of the mill to-do list, and if we have time, I felt like we could put a nice little spin on it where we add a little bit of local storage persistence, to the actual to-do list. I think that would be a really really neat feature to kind of add. So feel free to watch this and code along. Hopefully the demo guys are kind to me tonight. We'll see. I did want to have a nice QA session afterwards. So once we get to that point, just type your questions in chat. It can be on anything. It could be on, where we're coding out, or it could just be general questions. I'm open to answering either. That's perfectly fine with me. I will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions about a step that I'm taking, then please feel free to, type that question in chat and I will respond to it. All right. So I do like to kind of start things off on a lighter note. And that light note is if this is your first, look into the world of JavaScript, then I kind of want to, there's a funny video that I like to show people, before they start coding in JavaScript. All right, let me go ahead and pull that up. All right, and hopefully you can hear it.
Of how awesome Ruby is. But if you ever actually do this, then what? Let's talk about JavaScript. Does anyone know in JavaScript what array plus array is? Well, let me ask you this first. What should array plus array be? Empty array, I would also accept type error. That is not what array plus array is. Wrong. Wrong. Array plus array is empty string. Obviously, I think that's obvious to everyone. Now, what would array plus object be? This should obviously be type error because those are completely disparate types. Does anyone know what this is? No. Close. No. Far away. It's object. Right. Nicely done. Now, of course, because this is plus, so you can flip the operands and same thing comes out. So if we do, what? No, that's just an object. If you do object plus array, you should get exactly the same thing, which, as you can see, you do. And finally, the only one of these that's actually true is, because you add arrays, you get empty string, that doesn't make sense. But an object plus an object is actually not a number, technically. So this one's actually right. And exactly, right? Like, what is even going on in this lab? I don't even understand what person with a brain in their head would think that any of this is a good idea. Okay. Enough making fun of languages that suck. Let's talk about JavaScript.
All right. So let's talk about JavaScript. Um, so don't let that, if this is your first introduction to JavaScript, don't let that video scare you. JavaScript is a wacky, wonderful, wonderful language. I enjoy teaching it. It's one of my favorite languages to program in, but it does come with its oddities. I will say that. All right. Let's actually get started. So I kind of was thinking maybe we should wireframe a little bit. Like maybe we should kind of sketch out what we're looking to accomplish tonight. And so I'm actually going to go to another site. Let's see if I can go to draw.io. And I'm just going to do kind of a rough sketch. So let's just try it free. Um, let me actually. I think I have an account. Let me actually log in. Let's just continue with Google. Um, let's do the cloud solution. And where's the entry point? The site's kind of changed a little bit. If not, I can just pull up. I don't want to install anything, but I can just pull up like a little sketch tool. Um, yeah, I think I'll do that instead because I'm not seeing the entry point there. So yeah, let me just actually pull up a quick sketch tool and kind of diagram what exactly we're going to be doing tonight. Let's see what I have. Freeform on here. All right, let me share that screen. Let's present, share screen. All right, let's go to Freeform. And where were you? There you go. All right, sure. All right, so what here we go. And where's my little pen tool here? Not there, not there. Oops. I want to draw a bunch of blocks. Here, let's see here. Here's my pen. Okay, here we go. Actually, that's a line drawing tool. I'm kind of upset that draw.io isn't quite working. So let's look for an equivalent site. Let's see. Do like a little sketch pad. I think that might work. All right, perfect. There we go. So let me actually share the screen. Promise you we'll get there. All right. Here we go. Sketchpad. All right. So what I'm actually looking to do tonight, and let's see if I can actually. I did want to test it out, but let's see if I can actually delete this. This is a tool, unfortunately, I'm unfamiliar with. So let's delete that. All right, here we go with the pencil. All right, so what I'm actually going to be working on tonight is we're going to do a basic to-do list. All right, so we're just going to have our header at the top, right? We're going to be creating a form, and that particular form is going to have an input. Here we go. Right. And below that form, I figured we would create maybe like some kind of like add or submit button. So we'll call it like add or submits. Right. Down here will be our actual to-do items. So what's going to actually happen is as we type into this input box here, and we hit add or submit, then the items are going to actually populate in a list here below. Additionally, what my plan is, to kind of spice things up a little bit, I kind of figured we would maybe add in, like a nice hover effect. Like whenever you're hovering over an item, like let's change the background color to indicate that we are in fact hovering over that item. Additionally, every single item that we add to our to-do list is going to have a delete button, right? And so when we click that delete button, then it's going to remove that particular item from our to-do list. And additionally, time permitting, there's two more features that I would like for us to implement. One of those features is, one of those features is going to be like an in-between status, right? I don't want to quite delete it, an item. Maybe I want to like keep track of what I've actually accomplished throughout the day, right? So one of the features is going to be if we click on this item, then the actual item is going to be listed with the strike through. And that's going to indicate that we've actually completed the item, but for a reason or another, we're not quite ready to delete it. All right. And lastly, and probably the most challenging feature, is going to be I want to add in persistence. I think that'll be a really, really, really cool thing to add in. Specifically, the persistence is going to be we're going to utilize local storage. Now, when kind of designing this, I wanted to use things that this course specifically teaches. So everything that we're going to implement tonight is going to be something specifically taught in 4Geeks, right? Um, Now I know you're probably talking about when do we learn, if you're a previous student, when do we learn about local storage? Well, I would ask you to go and review the specific chapter on when we implemented JWTs. Because whenever we implemented JWTs, we actually learned about how to utilize local storage. All right. So everything else should be, pretty self-explanatory. Again, if we have time, we are going to implement this list, add persistence by adding, taking all of our to-do items and put them into local storage. All right. So with that, let's get into it. Like we spent enough time kind of diagramming. I think everyone kind of has a nice little idea of what we're actually going to implement. So let's actually get into it. So what I'm going to do first, by the way, whenever I'm implementing this, I'm not only going to show you, we're not just going to go through the code. Like I'm going to come from the aspect of if you were doing this solo and you wanted to know, how I came up with utilizing this resource or utilizing that resource. So not only am I going to show you the code, I'm also going to show you, how you would research, the specific, styling, bootstrap styling, or event listeners. I'm going to show you, if you had no knowledge going into it, where you would find a bit more information on how to utilize these items. All right. Also, the code is going to be implemented using Git pod. I'm not going to implement this locally. I'm actually going to be using Git pod. All right. So with that being said, let me see if there are any questions. Great to see our instructors taking time out to teach. Hello. It is kind of weird. I feel like I'm in like a room by myself. I do miss that student interaction and hearing voices. I can't lie. All right, but let's get started. All right, so first thing first, I'm going to go to getpod.io. All right, I'm going to create a new workspace, right? And whenever you want to create a new workspace, you need to base it off of a previous repository. Now, 4Geeks has made it really, really easy for us by providing us with a bunch of repositories, templates that we can actually fork over, right? Specifically, the one that I'm actually going to fork over is, well, I've already forked it over, but the one I'm actually going to use for this particular demo is the HTML-hello template. And it's actually really cool because it's just a blank template. It has a server where we can view our output, but it's very bare bones. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. All right. So I selected that particular, actually, let me show you where you'll find that. Even better. So let's go to GitHub and let's look at the 4Geeks. Let's do HTML-hello. Yep. Here we go. All right. So this is the template specifically that I'm actually using whenever I'm creating my new GitPod workspace. And as you can see, there's just some readmes in here. There's a Python file that allows us to spin up a server so we can view our output. It gives instructions on how to use this particular template. Specifically, this command right here is actually really, really important because it's actually going to spin up the server that's going to allow us to view our output. All right. But again, I'm just using this HTML hello template provided by 4Geeks. 4Geeks has a bunch of other ones. As you want to accomplish other tasks, but in this particular case, I just want like the very basic. All right. So I'm going to go back to GitPod. Everything looks good here. And I'm just going to create my new workspace. All right, I'm going to wait for that to happen. While waiting, I'm going to go ahead and close YouTube. All right, so here I am. I'm within my GitPod. I do wish GitPod had a dark mode. Maybe it does, but something I probably have played around with a little bit earlier. It's really bright. But one of the first things that I need to do is I'm gonna go ahead and run the command that allows me to spin up my server so I can view my output. All right, and there's two places that I can find that. I can actually find that in the README of the actual template, in the 4Geeks Academy, repo, right? Or they've made it a lot easier for you where if you're not, say you're not on the repo, then the command is actually within the README right here, right? So I'm actually going to go into the README and I'm going to copy this command and I'm going to go ahead and paste. All right, it's going to do some things. It's going to install some things. Exactly what I want to have happen. You see a development server comes up, and additionally, it prompts me that the service is available on port 3000. This is going to be how you preview. Once we get into it, this is going to be how we preview everything, right? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to open this in a new window, right? Right now it says 404. It didn't open in a new tab. All right. Let me add this one on too. So I can actually show you what it says. All right, here we go. Let's close that window. All right, so this is our actual output. Right now, we're missing our index.html file. So this is absolutely expected because if you look, we have not created anything. All right. So now we're going to actually start. So where I like to actually start is I like to go ahead and create my basic file structure, right? So I know I'm going to need 3 files in particular. The first file that I'm going to need is I'm going to need the actual HTML file, which is going to contain my style sheets, all my body content, and the reference to my JS file. The second file that I'm going to create will then be my JS file, and then I'm going to probably need an additional style sheet of some sort. So I'm going to go ahead and create that also. All right. So let me actually start with the HTML file. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and create index.html. All right. And in index.html, let me go ahead and close the README. In index.html, if you've been one of my students, then you know what I like to do next. What I like to do next is I like to go ahead and put in the boilerplate code. Now, there's 2 ways you can actually accomplish this, right? Visual Studio Code makes this really, really, really easy to do. So the way that I'm actually going to do it tonight is I'm just going to simply type an exclamation. It's no easier. It doesn't get much simpler than that. Whenever I type an exclamation and I hit tab, then we now have the boilerplate for a basic HTML page. We have our doc type, we have our open and close HTML tags, we have our open and close head tags. It even puts in our title, so we can put in our title, and it already puts our cursor inside of the body tag so we can begin to add content. All right, so that's exactly what I want right there. All right, so that's step 1. Step 2 is I'm going to go ahead and create my index.js file, and I'm going to leave that blank. We'll be adding a lot to it, but I like to just go ahead and create the file, right? And lastly, I'm going to go ahead and create style.css, right? So these 3 files are the files that are going to create our to-do list. We have index.html, we have index.js, and we have style.css. Now, the next portion that I like to do is I like to go ahead and add in my references to those particular files. All right. Now, in order for me to add my style sheet, I am going to use the link tag. All right. And VS Code makes it really, really easy. I can go down to link CSS, right? It already provides the rel attribute saying that this is for a style sheet, right? And the href is going to be the location of your actual style sheet along with the file name. In this particular case, it is style.css as appears here. So there's nothing that I need to do here, right? And if I wanted to confirm, then I could delete it and reselect it, and that lets me know. That's quite a sanity check for me. That lets me know. And let me actually zoom in here a bit. I can imagine it's probably hard to see, but that lets me know that it's kind of a sanity check. I do enjoy my sanity checks. All right, so that lets me know I'm linking the correct style sheet. All right. Excuse me. All right. Then I like to give myself a little bit of space, and I'm going to go ahead and put in my script tag. I'm going to go ahead and link in my index.js file. So I'm going to just do index, and there's index.js, and we are getting there. All right. So I have my file structure intact. I have brought in the files, the external files that I've created. I have brought in my index.js file here. I have brought in my style CSS file, even though they're both empty. I've brought that in here. So what I like to do next is we're going to be utilizing Bootstrap, right? So I'm going to give myself a little space. I want to list my style sheet last is because if there are any styles that are conflicting, right? I want the styles that I create to take precedence over those in Bootstrap. All right. Now I don't anticipate having any conflicting styles, right? But it's a really, really good habit to have whenever you're using Bootstrap, right? To list your style sheet last. All right. So I'm gonna go to Bootstrap and I am going to copy over the CDN um, style sheet links. I'm going to copy this one, go ahead and paste it in, hit enter, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab the next one. All right. So let's actually talk about Bootstrap a little bit. If you're unfamiliar with it, what Bootstrap is, it's what's called a CSS framework, right? So frameworks make our lives a lot easier because they make very common tasks, a lot simpler for us to do. Now, the beauty of Bootstrap is out of the box, if we utilize Bootstrap and along with, you know, um, you know, along with the way it actually handles, let's actually go to the docs, along with, its grid system, then what we end up with is a site that is mobile, pretty much mobile responsive, off the bat, without us having to do a lot of work on that particular end. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, in today's in today's design world, you want to be thinking mobile first always, right? um because people are consuming media utilizing different tools. It's no longer can you guarantee that someone's sitting in front of a desktop computer, right? People are consuming content on their mobile devices, be it their phone or their tablet, right? So why not design for the smallest screen that your content is going to appear on, right? Bootstrap makes this very, very easy, right? Because utilizing Bootstrap classes, then we can create a site that is mobile responsive with minimal work. And this is one of the reasons that I really do enjoy, utilizing Bootstrap. Now, there will be gaps, and this is where your custom style sheet comes into play. But with Bootstrap and utilizing the different styling classes in Bootstrap, we'll be able to accomplish a lot. All right. To change the dark mode, go to the bottom left, themes and color theme. Thank you. You just saved my eyes, Jessica. So let's bottom left, and let's go to themes, color theme, and let's just do get pod dark. I think that's a lot better. Is that a lot easier to read for everyone out there? I think that's a lot friendlier. I really do appreciate that. All right. So back to our code. We have our Bootstrap, style sheet links in there. We have our style sheet link in there. We have our JS file. I like to next do just another real quick sanity check, right? So I want to make sure that the Bootstrap style sheet CDN is actually bringing in, the Bootstrap styles. Now, one of the ways I can make that determination is by simply just doing the H1, and I'm just going to say hello world, right? Now, been familiar with Bootstrap, the Bootstrap styling of an H1 is a lot different than your normal run of the mill, just normal browser handling of an H1, right? And so by me putting in this H1 that says hello world and you doing a quick preview, I know that based off the look of this particular H1, that my bootstrap styles are indeed been correctly applied. All right. So just a kind of a quick sanity check there. All right. So we're good. Everything seems to be working properly. Um, everything seems to be linked correctly. So now we're actually ready to start creating our to-do list. All right. So going back to that sketch, um, and unfortunately I don't have it open anymore. But going back to that sketch, just a reference of it, we know that we're going to need, um, we're going to have an input box at the top. Inside of that input box, we're going to type in, our to do items, and it's going to then populate a list below, right? So that's just going to be our basic structure that we're going to create within our actual HTML file. All right. So to do so, let's actually begin. All right. So the first thing I like to do is I want to create a div, and I want to give it the actual class container. All right. That's the way to start. If you look at the Bootstrap docs, then that's kind of the way that they suggest you start too. All right. So I'm gonna create a my div, and I am going to with that div I am going to supply the class container to it. And an easy way to do that is I can do div, I can do dot container, right? And I'll show you that again. Let me actually show you that again. All right. So I'm going to type in div. This is going to be the tag that I want to create. And if I want to just, kind of quickly, apply a particular class to that div, then I can just do div dot container, and I can tab, and then it creates a div with the class container. All right. It's just kind of a shortcut there. All right. Inside of this div, let's go ahead and give our to-do list maybe like a heading of some sort. So we can use H1 or H2. I'm going to use an H2 here, and I'm just going to say something like, to-do list. Which actually reminds me, I should probably go ahead and give my to-do list a title. So let's do to-do list. All right. Notice that now that I've given it a title, if I refresh this, notice that it now no longer says document. Now it's actually saying to-do list. So now we're starting to look a little more professional. All right. All right. So we have our container. We have our H2 that says to-do list. If we go here, I know it doesn't look like much yet, but it's starting to actually take shape. All right. So next portion that I want to create is going to be that input box, right? And that input box is going to give us the ability to type in, an item that we want to add to our to-do list, right? And then lastly, at the bottom, we're going to put our actual list portion. All right. So again, this is just going to be the basic structure of our HTML page. Once we have this basic structure, then we'll actually dive into giving our to-do list actual functionality by actually, putting in actual JavaScript code. All right. So let's go ahead and create our form, if I can spell it correctly. I don't actually need action, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Right. So we have created our form. But I do want to give this form an ID, and I'll explain why later. All right. So I'm going to give it an ID. And I'm going to set the ID equal to, whoops. I'm going to set that ID equal, let's just call it something like to do form. We call it like to do dash form or something like that. Some way for us, some unique value that we'll use to identify this form whenever we get to the actual JavaScript portion. So if you're kind of new to JavaScript, providing IDs to elements is a really good way to accomplish your goals, your DOM manipulation goals, right? Because JavaScript has a variety of ways to refer to an element, specifically utilizing the element's ID, right? So it's a really good practice, to if you ever anticipate that you're going to want to retrieve data or manipulate an element, then it's really good practice to go ahead and give that element, a unique identifier, specifically an ID. Now, IDs are, again, it is something that should be unique. So since I have used the ID to do form, for this particular form, I should not use this ID to do form anywhere else on my page. Every ID I create should be unique. All right. All right. So we have our form, and inside of our form, we're going to go ahead and add our input box. So I'm going to do inputs, and I'm going to utilize the functionality within Visual Studio Code. Specifically, I want to create an input, and the type of data that I'm inputting into this box is going to be text. So I'm going to scroll down to where it says text. Now, notice that we have a variety of different input boxes that we can actually choose. Choosing the correct type of input box is actually a really important step, because our browsers generally have built-in functionality that handles, it knows our browsers know what to do, with a specific input. Like, for example, if I choose date time, right? Some browsers will actually present me with a date picker, which is actually really cool, right? So I can, click on the little date icon, next to this particular field, and I can scroll and select a date, which is actually really cool functionality that you don't even, by just selecting the correct type, you gain, your site actually gains. Another is like password, right? Remember, whenever you're typing into a password input field, then instead of showing the actual text of your password, what you actually see instead is you actually see the dots that appear on the screen instead of the actual password itself, which is actually cool. And again, we can gain this functionality just by selecting the correct input type. So something really, really easy to do. In this particular case, I am going to select type text, right? And I don't need the name, but I will be utilizing the ID. All right. Any questions so far? All right. I don't see any questions in chat, so we will continue. Don't worry, we will be taking a break. I know this is going to be a pretty lengthy demo, so there will be we will take a 15-minute break or so, but that'll come much later. All right, all right, all right. So back to the input. Input type text. I'll apply some styling classes to it in a bit. We'll go over those. I want to show you specifically what's how to determine what styling classes to apply to them by utilizing the Bootstrap site. We do want to give this input an ID, because we will be referencing this input. All right. So the actual the ID value, I want it to be descriptive, right? I want it to represent, what is this ID for? What will we potentially be utilizing it for, right? So I'm probably going to use the name something like, form inputs. Just keep it simple, right? So ID of form input, all right? Maybe not the greatest name, but still descriptive enough for the sake of this demo. All right. Now the input, if you've noticed, there's not a closing tag associated with it. Inputs are one of the tags. If you've been through 4Geeks, then you know that some of the HTML tags that we use don't require a closing tag. Input happens to be one of those tags, right? So I don't need to put any kind of closing input tag there. Input self closes. All right. So let's take a look and see how things are starting to shape up. All right, we're getting there. All right. So as you can see, we have our to-do list. We have our input that accepts, that where we can type in actual text, right? So we're getting there, right? Um, Now, obviously, we're gonna have to make some adjustments on styling. We'll do those in a bit, but again, we're just trying to get our basic page HTML structure down first. Then we'll go back and we'll style it out and make it, look a lot more professional. All right. So, all right, after we have our inputs, we're gonna want a button of some sort. All right. So let's create that. Let's do button, and I'm going to scroll down to button, and I'm going to make it of the submit type. All right. This is going to be how we actually submit our form item. All right. So when we type here, this is the item that we have to do. We're going to hit the button that we're about to create, and once we hit that button, it's then going to populate our actual to-do list. All right. So in order to accomplish that, we're going to create our button, type submit, and we're going to give our button. We have to give it a value of what we actually want our button to say. We can choose submit, we can choose add. I like add because submit would be really good for maybe if we are submitting an actual form, right? But in this case, it's a to-do list, and so we're adding to our to-do list. So I like to use add, and let's refresh it. And now you see that we have our we have our form input, and we have our button, which has we have our add button here. So it's starting to take shape. It is starting to take shape. All right. So that should be pretty much it for what we need for the actual form portion, right? But let's go ahead and create the portion that is going to ultimately contain our to-do list. All right. So what I'm kind of thinking there is we're going to want to create a list of some sort, right? Now, when we create a to-do list, I don't know if we want things to be like numbered, right? Do we want like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Because I don't know about you, when I do a to-do list, like I'm skipping around, completing the task, out of order, right? So it doesn't really make sense in my mind for the to-do list to have, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So what I'm kind of thinking here is why not create an unorganized list? Right? An unorganized list. That way, the to-do items, they're preceded with maybe a dot instead of being, numerically grouped. All right. So let's create a UL, right? And I'm just going to create a couple of list items, and I'm gonna put item 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do shift option down, and I'm going to do item 2 and item 3. The reason I'm doing this is that I just want to see how it looks. So if we refresh, then it's right on top of each other, but I kind of will use this as a gauge on how I'm going to style this particular section. All right. All right. And for this UL, as always, let's give it, this is something that we're going to alter. How do I know we're going to alter it? Is because remember, whenever we type in something in our inputs, we click our add button, then we're going to be adding it to this particular unorganized list, right? So I'm going to give this list an ID, and I'm going to call it something descriptive. Let's just call it to-do list. All right. All right. And honestly, that should pretty much take care of our basic structure, right? If we look at it, then it's not there's some styling work that we need to do, but everything that we sketched out in the planning phase is there. We have our input, we have our button, and then we have the actual list of to-do items that we want to add. So now what we should kind of bring into play is let's style it up a little bit, right? So let's start at the top and start working our way down. So the first thing that I kind of notice is I don't necessarily want the header or the title to be right at the top like this. I want to bring it down a little bit, right? And so Bootstrap actually makes it really, really easy because with Bootstrap, we can actually control the margins, all right? So let's look at margins. All right. So these are the classes that you can use to control, specifically in this case, the margins for our content. Now, if I do a margin top here, then I know it will shift the content down because the margin will be the distance between my content and the very top of the container. All right. So what I'm going to do, and going back to Bootstrap, is I'm going to use M for margin. I'm going to use T for top, and then I'm going to give it a value from 0 to 5. All right. I'm gonna say that again. I'm going to do M for margin, T for top, and I'm going to actually put in a value here. Right. Now I was if I do 0, then that's going to be no margin at all, right? But if I put in an actual like value like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then that's going to be a varying degree of margin. Let's start off with let's see how like a 5 looks, right? Let's shift it down quite a bit. All right. So here in my div, I already have class container, right? But I'm going to apply, I'm going to chain together, an additional class by doing margin top, and let's do 5. So MT-5, all right? Now, once I hit refresh, that margin top should have shifted the contents down. And so let's make sure that did in fact happen. All right, so yeah, it did. It did shift our contents down, and I'm actually, that's not actually bad. There's a nice little offset from the top, so it is actually starting to take shape, and I'm fine with that. All right. So continuing to work our way down, let's work on. I think the to-do list portion is fine. I don't think we need to really do anything to adjust the typography there. We could, you definitely do have that option, but I'm actually going to leave that alone. What I will instead do is within my form, I want to alter this input box, right? It's small, and I haven't really applied any styling to it. So I'm actually going to alter this input box. All right. So what I'm actually going to do is let's apply a styling class to it. All right. So let's do class. All right. And let's utilize the Bootstrap class that's called form control. Let me actually form control. All right. So, so if we look at just like this is my looking at the Bootstrap site, this is just I want the box to span approximately the width of its container, right? And I also want it to kind of have this look and feel here. And one of the ways the way that I can accomplish that is by utilizing the class form control. All right. So I'm pretty much going to mimic what I see here. All right. So going back to my code, I'm going to use class form control. All right. I've already given my input and ID. That's great. While I'm here, what I'm actually going to do is let me go ahead and give it a placeholder. Now, if you're not familiar with what a placeholder does, there's um, there's two things that we can actually use to get text within our input box. Whenever it initially loads. With a placeholder, whenever we click in the box and we begin typing, the text disappears. If we use value, right, then the text appears in the box. And if we want to alter the text, then we need to actually adjust, the value of the text within the box. So let me actually show you the difference visually. All right. So let's put what needs to be done. All right. So notice here I'm using value. All right. So if I go back to my rendering, a refresh, then we see what needs to be done. By using value, if I want to alter this text, then I actually need to get rid of it and then put in my own text. Right. Every time I refresh this, then the actual text, what needs to be done, is going to be within the box. So that's not the behavior that I necessarily want. So let's put in a placeholder instead. All right, now look at the difference here. Now let me refresh. All right, now with a placeholder, the text is still in there. It still, it still gives us an idea of what we're going to be doing with this box, right? But as soon as I click in it and start typing, then the text disappears. So just kind of the difference between placeholder and value. All right, so I'm going to leave it in as placeholder. All right, so I've styled my form input using the Bootstrap class form control. But I kind of feel like maybe we need to put a little bit of a separation between our actual inputs, right, and our actual title up here, right, because they're kind of right on top of each other, right? So one of the ways I can actually do this is let's see if we can put in let's see if maybe we could put in another margin top and like 3, right? Let's see if that actually works. All right, so yep, shift it down a little bit. So now I have a nice um, bit of a wider gap in there, which is that looks starting to come together. All right, now our button. We need to style our button. So again, with Bootstrap, there's a lot that you can do with buttons. There's a lot of different colors that you can make them. Like for example, if I wanted to create a button, that has this like nice gray color to it, then I will use the class button dash secondary. If I want to create a button that has this bluish, this like sky blue color to it, then I will use button dash info. In this case, I'm gonna keep it really simple, and I'm just gonna use button primary. All right, and let's take a look and see if that is going to look nice. All right, so let's do class, and let's do btn that's primary. All right, let's go and view our outputs. Cool. That actually looks really, really good. All right, I'm cool with the blue color. What I don't like is the fact that now my inputs my input and my button are right on top of each other. All right, so I'm going to put a little bit of a separation between the two. So let's add I can add a margin bottom to my input, or I can add a margin top to my actual button. So let's do margin top, and let's just do like a 3. All right, and that should separate the two. And there we go. All right. So starting to take form. All right. And let me check chat to see if there are any questions. No questions in chat. All right. So back to it. All right. So we have our form, our input, and our button styled initially. So let's actually style our actual to-do list a bit. So this is why I created those list elements, those list items, right? Because I'm going to use this to kind of gauge my styling. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is in Bootstrap, there's this really handy thing called list group, right? So with list group, you can see that we get this desired look, right? So I'm going to utilize this particular class in order to, accomplish my styling goals. All right, so I'm going to do class, right? And let's put in list dash group, right? And let's just refresh, all right? Kind of getting there. It did shift things over. Let's do a little bit more, all right? Let's add a margin top. Let's add a margin top of 3. So that way, now when I refresh, my list items are now actually offset from my actual add button. All right. So that's the first thing. All right. We will be applying some specific classes to the L1s that we're going to create later, right? So I don't actually want to apply any styling classes to my L1s here. What I'm actually going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive. Why are you getting rid of your L1s? Is because if we go through workflow, we're going to type in our input. All right, so let's go here. Let's refresh. We're going to type an item in and add it to our to-do list. Like, let's actually type an item, like walk the dog, right? There, we have an item that we want to add to our to-do list. We're going to hit add, right? Nothing happens right now, but what ultimately is going to happen is in our JavaScript code, we're going to take that item, right? And we're going to add it to this empty, unorganized list here. And we'll accomplish that by utilizing DOM manipulation, all right? So as far as the basic structure of my page, we're pretty much done. Now, it doesn't look like a lot, but a lot of the magic is going to happen behind the scenes with our actual JavaScript code. So as far as the basic structure of our page, this is pretty much all we need right here. Well, this is pretty much all I need right here in order to create a to-do list, right? But let's give it some functionality. So this is the important part. All right. Let's do that. All right. So we're pretty much done with index.html. We may need to revisit it to do some tweaks later. But for the most part, we're done here. Right. So we're going to move on to actually doing some JavaScript coding and actually giving our form, our to-do list, some actual functionality. All right. So what do I want to do first? Well, what I actually want to do first is I want to take the text that I type here, like walk the dog, right? When I hit add, I want to take the value of the text here and I want to add it to my to-do list as a list item. All right. So that's what I'm looking to actually accomplish. And the way that I can accomplish this in JavaScript is by utilizing what's called an event listener. Now, in JavaScript, just in general, whenever you're browsing, you are triggering all kinds of events. The simple movement of a mouse triggers an event. Mouse up triggers an event. Mouse down, triggers an event. key presses trigger events. There are so many events been generated. Um, whenever you're just doing your normal, browser activities. Now, we aren't concerned about the majority of those events. We're concerned about one of those events, right? The event that I am concerned about in this particular case is going to be the click event, right? Or this, better yet, the submit event, right? Whenever I click on this button, going back to our HTML code, you see this button is a submit button, right? This means we actually utilize it to submit our form. All right. This button is used to submit our form. We don't want the default behavior to happen. We want to control what happens whenever we submit. We click the submit button. So what we can actually do is we can listen for the submit event. And what we can do when we hear the submit event is we can take the contents of this input and we can add it to our to-do list. I know that sounds complex, but it's way easier than you think. All right. So follow me here. So first thing we need to do is we need to do documents.get elements by ID. All right. What element are we trying to get specifically? Well, we're trying to, whenever we submit, the submit event is going to be triggered via this form, right? Because we're submitting, this particular form, all right? So we need to reference this form, which is why we actually gave an ID of to-do form, all right? So let's reference this particular form, all right? So let's do get element by ID, right? And let's reference our to-do dash form. Target type. All right. So we're referencing the form. What are we listening for? Well, to that form, we're going to add an event listener. So we're going to add event listener. All right. Now, event listener it takes in a variety of data, right? The first portion is going to be like what type of event are we listening for? In this particular case, the event that we're listening for is going to be the submit event, right? So it'll auto complete for me. Notice that there's a bunch of, like I said, bunch of different values that we can actually put in here. But the one that I'm concerned about is the actual submit event. All right. So I'm going to add an event listener and I'm going to listen for the submit event. When is the submit event triggered? The submit event is going to be triggered whenever I click this add button. All right. So I'm going to add a listener for submits, right? And now is where I put in the functionality. All right. So boom, I listen for this event. This event's, I heard the the submit event. How do I want to handle that? What do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? Right? The functionality that we want to accomplish, whenever we hear this submit event, we're going to pass in as what's called a callback function. Right? So I'm just going to create a quick arrow function here. And depending on where you are in terms of the course, like we could easily provide just your normal run-of-the-mill JavaScript function here. For syntactic, purposes, I'm just going to do a quick arrow function. If you're not familiar with what an arrow function is, basically it's a short. Well, there are key differences, but this is going to just be shorthand notation for me to create a function on the fly. All right. So I'm going to pass in the event, right? And I'm going to create my fat arrow. And I'm going to open up my code block. All right. So that's step one. Now, whenever I hit add, the default behavior in a variety of in most browsers is to refresh the form. That is not my desired behavior. I want to control what the form does. And this is something that you generally would do in React also. If you're familiar with, with React. I want to control the event. I want to take full control over it, right? So any default behaviors that are built into your browser when submitting a form, I want to override. So the way that I can do that is I can reference the event and I can do a quick prevent default. Now I'm in control. I control what happens with this particular event. All right. So whenever I hear submit, I am now in control over. I'm saying, hey, don't do your default behavior, browser. Do what I tell you to do. All right. So that's going to be step one. I'm going to prevent the default browser behavior. All right. Step two is I need to get some info, right? Specifically, I need to I need to create a couple of variables. Specifically, I want to create a variable that is going to allow me to get the value that I type in here for walk the dog, right? I typed in walk the dog, right? I want to be able to get the value from, I want to be able to get this value and extract it somehow, all right? So going back to index.html, the index.js, a couple of variables that I'm going to create that we will need to use is one, I am going to use keyword let, and I'm going to call it to do inputs, and I'm going to set it equal to documents get element by ID, right? And I am going to get form inputs, right? And I'm going to create another one called, let's call it, to-do list. I'm going to set it equal to documents, get elements by ID, right? And I am going to pass in to do dash list. Now it will become clear why we're doing this here in 8-bit, right? But I'm setting myself up to two things: to be able to add information or extract information from my input. All right. So what I'm going to do is, whenever that button is clicked, I want to add. If we go back to our structure, I want to add in an li. And I want the li to contain the information from my input box, like walk the dog. All right. The way that I actually do that in JavaScript, utilizing DOM manipulation, is first thing first, I need to create that element, right? So in order for me to add an li to this list, this unorganized list, I need to create an li, right? So the way to actually do that is I am going to create a variable. I'm going to call it new to do. I call it like new to do item, right? But let's call it like new to do. All right. And I'm going to set it equal to document dot create elements. Right. And what element do I want to create? Well, in this case, I want to create an li. Right? So every single time I add an item here and I hit add, I want to create an li, right, that will populate this particular unorganized list. All right. So new to do document.create element li. So I'm going to create an li. Now, what do I want to do with that li? I want to add it to to my unorganized list, right? So first, I create li. Let's give it some data first, right? So I'm going to do new to do, which is the new li that I just created, and I'm going to do dot inner. Let's do inner HTML, right? And I'm going to set that equal to. I'm going to reference the to do input, and I'm going to specifically reference the value of my to do input. All right. So what does that accomplish? This is my input right here. This is my to do input. When I submit this, there's going to be a value associated with this. What is the value going to be? It's going to be whatever was in the box whenever I hit add. So I want to get that value, right? I want to get the value from this particular input. What am I then doing with the value? Well, that new li, that I created with the intent of adding it to this unorganized list, the li that I created, I'm going to take this value and I am going to, whenever I declare inner HTML, that means the value that I got from the input will then be added to the inner HTML of my li. So what will happen is here's my li that I'm creating, right? The value that I'm getting from my input will be added here. So like walk the dog. That is the beauty of inner HTML. It's going to add it in between these particular tags. So so I can take the value from my input box and I can then add it to my li, like so. All right. So I've created my li. I've actually given my li some inner HTML, so a value, right? So my last step is I need to actually add it to I need to actually add it to my actual to-do list, which is why I went ahead and created this variable up here called, let to-do list equals document.get element by ID to-do list. If we go back, remember what our to-do list is. This is our to-do list right here, this UL that we created. We want to add the li or the list item to this UL. All right. So let's do that. So we're going to do, so we need a reference to-do list, our to-do list, then we do dot append child, right? And so what are we adding specifically? Well, we're going to add new to-do, right? This li that we created, right? This li that we created and gave a value to, right? We're going to do to-do list, which again here's our to-do list, it's UL. We want to add a child to it, right? So we do so by referencing the ID of this item, which is to-do list. Then we do dot append child because we're going to add a child element to it. Just like if we were to do it like here, we're adding a child element to it, right? So we're going to do dot append child, right? And what are we appending? Specifically, the li item that I'm creating. All right. So that functionality should actually work well enough for us to actually test it. All right. So let's refresh and let's add in walk the dog. And it does. Let's add in, let's do fold the laundry. There we go. Now, if I view the source of this, I want you to watch what happens. So let's go to our body. Let's go to our container. Let's expand our UL. All right. Now, remember what we're doing here. We're taking the contents. We're taking the value of this input. We're creating a new LI, and we're adding the LI to, as a child to my UL, to my unorganized list. All right. So watch this. Let's do, wash the car. Right. Watch what happens down here. All right. I hit add. It's going to create my LI. The contents, the inner HTML, my LI is going to say wash the car, and it's going to add it as a child to my unorganized list. There we go. There's wash the car now. Whoops, I didn't mean to. There we go. All right. But I can keep doing that. I can continue to add item after item after item. So my to-do list actually has a fair bit of functionality right now. So it's starting to take shape a bit, right? But I promised you that, we were going to apply some styling to the LI. Let me show you a really cool way for us to do that, right? So with our LI, we can reference the LI that we created called new to do. So new to do, and we can do dot class list. Now, if we do dot class list, then the LI element's already been created. We created it here. We've given it value, right? The class list, what that actually does is it applies styling classes to my LI, right? Specifically, what styling classes do I want to apply to it? Well, I'm just going to keep it really simple. It's just going to be a list group item. All right. So let's do that and let's see how it looks. All right. So let's go back to our code. Let's do class list. And we're going to, it's class list. Whoops. Dot add. And let's add list dash group dash item. All right. List group item. All right. And let's refresh. Right. So everything resets. So let's put in walk the dog. Right. Now let's add. And notice that we went from the dots, to us having this nice little box around everything. So let's do let's do fold laundry. All right, add another one. You see everything now is in this nice box, which is, I like the way that this looks. And so this was the behavior that I actually wanted, right? And again, how did I accomplish that? I accomplished that by first creating an LI item, giving it a value, then adding, a bootstrap styling class to its class list. And the last part is I needed to actually append child, meaning that the LI that I created, which again, I saved in a variable new to do, right? I'm going to append child by referencing the to-do list. Here's our to-do list. And I'm adding that LI as a child to it with its contents and with its styling class. So that's half the battle right there. We, for the most part, we have a semi-functional to-do list. But let's actually spice this up a little bit, right? One of the problems that we run into is when I add an item, I don't want to have to delete it and add another item. There's a really simple way for me to actually fix this. And let me actually add some semicolons, right? There's a really simple way for me to fix this. I can actually do to do inputs dot value, and I can set it equal to the empty string. But what is this going to accomplish? I refresh and I didn't walk the dog, and I hit add, then you see that the value that was there previously is now gone. And so now it's free for me to type in whatever else I need to type in. and it resets every single time. It adds it to the to-do list, then it resets. So small things like that, add in, add in, make the functionality of your site, a lot more appealing. Another thing that I may want to do, you see, this is really undesired behavior. I don't want it so that way I can add an empty item to my to-do list. This is undesired behavior, right? I want there to be actual text there, right? So the only way that we will add an item to our to-do list is if we actually put in text of what needs to be done. All right. So let's put in a conditional. And this is why I kind of left this blank here. So let's do this. Let's say if, I'm specifically coding for the case where there's not a value in my to-do list input, right? So I can do if not to-do list or to-do input dot value, right? Dot trim. So there's a lot to unpack there. Why am I doing all of that? Well, one of the cool things that happens in JavaScript is whenever I do trim, right? If I put in a bunch of white space and then put in the text of the item that I want to add, you see it's kind of weird. What trim will actually do is it will actually get rid of all that white space for me, right? So it won't count the spaces as a character. It will actually look for actual characters, right? So I'm saying if my to-do input does not have a value once I trim it, then this is what I actually want to happen. Let's just throw up an alert. If you're not familiar with alerts, you will be in a bit, right? So let's throw up an alert, and let's say you must add in, I don't know, you must write, or you must type in a value, right? So then I can put in my else, right? So if in the case where we do have a valid input, let's actually add that in, right? We'll only go through the creation process. We'll only create the LI when we do in fact have a valid input value, right? So let's actually test out that functionality, all right? Let's reset, refresh. Let's say add. Oops. To do input dot value. Oops. I already see my mistake. Trim. That's why it wasn't yellow. I was like, why is it not yellow? All right, see, it says removes deleting and trailing white space and line termination characters. All right, now let's refresh it. All right. So notice that whenever the input box is blank, and I try to add, it says you must type in a value. Let's put an exclamation on the end of that, just to make it, yell at the user. All right. Okay, refresh. You must type in a value, right? If I do this, then a bunch of white space. The trim is going to remove that, and I hit add. You must type in a value, right? So now I have some built-in error checking. In order for you to add something to the to-do list, you have to type in a value, an actual value. So now if I go and type in Walt the dog, right, then that's a valid value. It's going to create my LI. It's going to reset, and it's going to add that LI, to my unorganized list. All right, moving on. We want to add the button. Um, and I know this is getting a little lengthy, but we wanted to add the button. All right, so let's do so here. All right, this is the beauty of now. There are security vulnerabilities whenever you use inner HTML, right? But those security vulnerabilities tend to be only if you're setting inner HTML from user input. In this particular case, we're hard coding, right? So with inner HTML, I can actually put in HTML code and I can add this as part of my LI that I create. And what I want to do is with the LI that I create, I want to go ahead and add my button. All right. My button is going to be for delete if I want to delete a list item. All right. So let's actually do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the value, and I'm also going to go ahead and add in my button. Um, and I'm going to copy pretty much the syntax here, for my button. Actually, let me just pretty much copy this over. All right, for the sake of time, let's just go ahead and put this in. All right, here we go. All right, and so we're going to do button. Type is going to be, I can actually get away with doing single quotes here. Button type is going to just be button. It's not the submit button. Class is going to be button primary. I don't want to do button primary. If I go to button, a delete button, I feel like should be red. So I'm actually going to do button danger. All right, so let's do type button danger. I don't really need a margin top. I don't think. All right. Okay, so button. Let's do button danger. And lastly, I do want it to be small, so I can do button dash small. And I want it to be at the end, so I can do float dash end. All right, so a lot of classes there. All right, so I created a button. I'm making it red. I'm doing a smaller version of it by doing button small, and I'm making it float at the end. And I want to update the text to say delete. And let's put a semicolon at the end. And that should create my button. If I refresh, now I can walk the dog. And you see I do have my button here, right? It doesn't have any functionality, but it does exist. I go and add something else. There's my delete button. So it's starting to come together. All right, going back to it, let me add in one little thing, and I'll tell you why I added this here in a little bit. All right, but I want to give my button some actual functionality, right? Because I've created a button, right? And so in order to give my button functionality, right, then I want to, I want to add an additional event listener to every button, to the button that I just created. And how can I do that? Well, what I can do is I can do new to do, right? Dot um add event listener, right? I'm going to reference a click event because this isn't a submit button. This is a button that I'm clicking on to actually delete. The submit button was part of the form. This is actually a delete button. So I'm going to do, I'm going to reference the click event, right? Let's pass in the event. All right. And what we can do is we can do e.targets dot, actually, you know what? Let's do something else here. Let's scroll down a little bit and let's actually separate this out. So let's do document.get elements by ID. All right, we're going to get our to-do list. We are going to still add our event listener. All right, we're still going to reference the click event, right? And we're going to everything's still the same here. We just want to separate it out. we could put it all together, but what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to actually get really smart here, right? Now, in JavaScript, the manipulation is as follows for delete, right? Whenever we delete, we click the delete. We don't want to delete the delete button. We want to actually delete the parent element. Like, what is this delete button contained within? And if we look, we see that if we expand an li, then part of the li is the actual button, right? So we want to delete the parent element that contains the button, specifically the li. So one of the ways that we can do this is we can do if, let's do e.targets.class list dot contains the word delete. All right. If the class list of the target, which is the button that we're clicking on, contains the word delete, then we know where we are. So the event listener, there's going to be multiple event listeners on a particular li. We're going to have one event listener where we click on it and it's going to cross it out. We're going to have another event listener for the actual button itself. So we actually are going to get clever, and we're going to add a class, to this button that does nothing, and we're just going to call it delete. And we're going to say that way we know what we're clicking on. So if the target of the item we're clicking on contains, the class deletes, then here's what we're going to do. All right, we are going to do e.targets.parent parent elements, right, dot remove, boom. All right, and that's should be all we have to do. So let's actually test out the functionality of deletes. Let's refresh. Let's type in walk the dog. Let's add. There's our delete button. Let's add one more just to test. So let's add test. Right. We hit delete, and there we go. We hit delete again, and now if I expand the div, expand. Let's add an item to the UL. Right. The UL now has a li item in it. Right. And now notice what happens when I hit delete. Right. Now my UL is actually empty, and that li item is gone. So boom, we have delete. All right. So awesome. All right. We're going to add in one more bit of functionality. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to add in another event listener, but this particular one is going to be on the to-do item itself, the li. If we click on the li, right, then what we actually want to have happen is we want to cross it off, because that means we've done that task, but we're not quite ready to delete it. All right, so let's do that. So let's add in another event listener. Let's do new to do dot add event listener. Right, we're going to reference the click event. Right, and what we're going to do is we're going to same thing, fat arrow. And what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to put in like a console log here, and I'm going to type in the word, cross off, right? Just so we can make sure this event is going to work, as intended. All right, so let's do that. So we have two different events here. All right. All right. So when I click here, then let's go to console. When I click here, the event should trigger, and this particular event should trigger crossed off. If I click here, this should trigger a completely separate event. right? But the way to distinguish between the two events is the delete event only happens, it deletes the parent element, right? Because we got really smart, and the class list of our button actually contains the word delete. So that way we know we can get really smart here, and says if this class list contains delete, then we're going to remove the parent element. But in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to, if we click anywhere within the li, we're going to cross the item out. Now, why did I put console log, crossed off here? Is because we have to actually give this functionality, and the way that we're actually going to do that is we need to actually create a custom style, right? So we're going to create a class, and we're going to call it checked, right? Inside checked, what we're going to do is we're going to set the background color, right? And we're going to set it to like a darker gray. So let's do, 888. And we have our nice dark gray, right? We're going to set the color of the text to a different color. So let's actually make it white, right? And lastly, we're going to do text decoration, right? And we're going to do line through, right? So now, whenever we go back to this actual event listener, what we can now do is we can just simply do e.targets.class.list dot toggle, right? And what we can actually toggle is the style checked. So why do we want to do a toggle there, right? We don't want to just simply do e.target.classlist.add, right? Because what if we want to uncheck or uncross out, the item? What if we inadvertently clicked on it and we don't want it to be crossed out? By utilizing toggle, every time I click on it, it's going to either add or remove that particular styling class that we created. So let's take a look at it. Let's refresh, and let's see if let's actually put something in, like Walt the dog. Right, add, right? Now if I click here, meaning that I've accomplished the goal, or I've done the event, I click here, the background color changes, the text color changes white from black to white, and the decoration is now strike through. But with toggle, if I click it again, then it returns back to what it was normally. White background, black text, no strike through. Click here again, strike through. Click here, nothing. So by us utilizing toggle, then that gives us the ability to select and unselect our tasks in our to-do list, right? So if we mistakenly clicked on it, then we have the ability to override it. All right, a lot of functionality there, but let's add a little bit more. And I know we're starting to run out of time. I did want to give you a break, but let's power through it. So that way I did want to get to persistence. For cases where you really want to kind of spice up the to-do list. But in all actuality, this is a lot of functionality in our to-do list, right? We can add an item, like fold the laundry, add, hang up, work clothes, right? Add, right? We have built-in error, built-in, a built-in validation, right? That tells us, if we didn't, add something incorrectly, then, it prompts us with it. Well, it gives us an alert, saying that that's invalid. We can delete, But not only can we delete, we can cross off items if we're not quite ready to delete them, right? We can still delete crossed off items. So by all, like, this is a really functional to-do list, all right? But we're going to take it to that next level, all right? And that next level is going to be actual persistence. And this is where it actually gets a little tricky, right? So what do we want to accomplish, right? What we are hoping to accomplish is, as I add items to my to-do list, right, then I have to have some kind of, place to store them. And as I continue to add items, it continues to update those items, right? So, for example, if I'm saving my to-do list in local storage, then right now it should just have the item, it should just have walk the dog, right? Or eat dinner. Whoops. Let's do eat dinner, right? So now my to-do list in local storage should be walk the dog and eat dinner, right? If I delete eat dinner, then what I have in local storage should update and it should just say walk the dog. All right. So let's actually accomplish that. Actually, let me back up real quick. There is one element that I did forget to add, and I just realized that right now is I can add in a hover effect, right? So I can easily do like li, and I can do my pseudo class because I can do li hover. This one doesn't take long, right? And so what do I want to do with my li hover? Well, let's just change the background color to maybe something a lighter gray, right? And so a lighter gray would be something like DDD instead of FFFDDD, right? All right. So if I refresh and I put in walk the dog, I put in dance, and now you see like I have this nice little hover effect. I click it, now it's darker. Click it, it's crossed out. Unclick it, you know. Now I can see what item I'm currently hovering over. All right, so nice little hover effect that took minimal code. All right. All right, so back to our persistence. Okay. So what I'm going to actually do is we need to save um we're going to first work on taking the items from our to-do list, right, and adding them to local storage. All right. All right. So the first thing that I need to do is let's create a function, another function, right? And we're going to create a function called um, actually, let's do it like this. We can add it here. We can add it directly to here. Let's do this. All right. So let's go up top and let's create a variable and let's call it like, my to dos. And we're just going to set it equal. It's just going to be an empty array. Why are we doing this? Because we need a way to store the data and then parse it into a format that we can save locally. All right. So we're going to do so by utilizing this array. All right. So we have my to dos. All right. So what we're going to do is whenever we hit the else portion, right? Remember, we only hit else when someone's actually typed something in, right? Because remember, it's going to hit the alert otherwise, but we're going to hit the else when someone types something in that's actually valid, right? What we can do is if we hit the else, right, then we can push to our array. So let's do my to dos dot push, and we're going to push in specifically to do inputs dot value. All right. So let's test that functionality with a quick console log. All right. So let's test. We're going to console log my to dos. All right, and make sure it's working as intended. All right. So let's refresh. Let's type in walk the dog. Let's hit add. Right. So there's our array down here. Let's add in something else like fold laundry, add. Here we go. There's our new array with walk the dog and fold laundry. That's exactly what we're looking to do. All right. So we are updating this empty array. We're pushing the value from our input to our array only in situations where we have a valid input. All right. So I'll get rid of console log because we know it works. I don't really need the console log. What I can do instead of the console log is now I can deal with remote storage. I mean, my local storage, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do local storage dot set item, right? I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it to-do list. Or, you know what? Let's just call it to-do. Make it simple, right? We all know it's a to-do list, right? But what am I going to do? I'm going to take that array, right, that I've already added items to, right, and I'm going to add that to my local storage. But I don't want to just add the array, right? It doesn't really work that way. What I want to do is I'm going to do JSON.stringify, right? And I'm going to stringify the to-do array, my to-dos. All right. Let me get rid of that unnecessary space. All right, here we go. And let's now test this out. Let's refresh. Let's do walk the dog. Let's say add. And there's no console log down here. But if I go to storage and I go to local storage, then notice what I have here, right? I have, here is my to-do list saved in local storage, right? The key is the name of this information is to do. That's why I named it here. Is, you know, whenever I set item, the name of the item is to do. That's how I reference the information that I'm storing, right? And so if I add something else like fold the laundry, right? Add, you notice that the value of the value, the array that we're saving into local storage, notice that is actually updating. So test, right? And it keeps updating, you know, as I continue to add items. So now I've given my data a little persistence, right? My to-do list a little persistence, but it's not quite without flaw yet. Because one of the big flaws is if I hit delete, nothing happens. My local storage is not reflecting the fact that I did hit delete. So this is what I'm going to do instead, right? I need to create a function. And in that function, I need to give myself the ability to remove an item. All right. Now, this is where things get tricky, right? Because here's a problem that we run into. All right. And I'll show you here in a bit. But first, let's actually set up the function. So let's create our function. I'm going to call it remove item, right? And there's no input. I don't need any parameters, right? So what I'm going to actually do is actually, you know what? Yeah, I will need one. So let's do item. All right. All right. So remove item. All right. And I'm gonna pass in the item, and let's just do a console log. Let's do item dot inner HTML. Let's console log item dot inner HTML. And you'll see why I'm doing this here in a bit. Because what I want to do is when that button is clicked, right here, when I click this delete button, right, I don't want it to only remove the parent element. I also want it to remove the item from local storage. All right. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to call on remove item. All right, and I'm going to actually pass in, um, let's actually pass in e.target dot, let's pass in the parent element. Right, and so that's going to console log it. There's a reason for that. Let me actually show you. So if I type this in, you see that in local storage it's updated. Okay, there we go. Those are the items. Let's go to console. If I hit delete, right, this is the inner HTML, right? Because part of the inner HTML is also the button. And it has to be that way, right? Because I need the button to exist within the LI so I can delete the parent element, right? Which is the LI. When I hit delete, I need to be able to delete the LI. But having the button as a child, as part of the LI, whenever I try to get the inner HTML or the inner text, right, then it's going to give me all of this back. And that's not what I want. Because one of the things that I need to be able to do is I need to be able to find where this entry is inside of my array. All right. So we have to actually do some things here. The first thing that I think we should do, right, is let's create a variable. Let's call it, we need to split that value. So let's call it like split val, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to do item.inner HTML, which is what we got here. This is the inner HTML. What we're going to do is we're going to split it on this character right here, right? So that way, whenever I want to extract the actual to-do item, I can do so by referencing index 0, right? So I can get rid of, I can split the inner HTML on this character here, the less than character, or yeah, the less than character, right? I can do my split here. So let's do that. All right, so let's split value item.inner HTML. Let's do a dot split, excuse me. And we're going to do the split on this character. All right, so then whenever we go in console log our split value, we should have an array of items. All right, so let's go here. Let's refresh. All right, and test, add. Right, so let's hit delete. And now look at the array of items we have whenever we split. Index 0 is the actual to-do list item, right? Now the rest of the indexes I don't care about, right? And I don't need them. I really only need index 0. But that was using split. That was a way that I can separate the actual contents, the inner HTML content that I need, that contains the actual item that I'm trying to do, my to-do item. All right. So we did inner HTML splits, right? Now we can get really clever. And we can do let the value that we're going to remove. All right, because ultimately, what's our goal? When we hit delete, we're trying to remove this item from our array, specifically local storage. Because you see test is still in local storage, right? We don't want that. We hit delete, so test should be gone, right? So now let's get smart about it. So we can do, remove item or remove, let's say value, val. And what we can do is we can reference my to-dos, which is my array, right? And we can get the index of, right? What are we going to get the index of? Well, this split value at index 0. right? So remember, this is index 0 here. I'm trying to get the index of. What index of allows me, it tells me the it searches at the beginning of the array, and it returns the index of the value in the array, right? So it's going to search through my it's going to search through the array, my to dos, and it's going to return the index that this value is at, right? Why are we wanting to do that? Well, this is what we want to remove. All right. So we want to remove it. So what we can actually do is we can utilize one of our higher order array methods. In this case, filter. All right. And don't worry if you haven't quite learned about those. If you're newer to 4Geeks, it's coming. All right. Whenever we get to the JavaScript section, you'll be learning all of this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say my to-dos. I'm going to set it equal to, my to-dos dot filter. Right. With filter, I can pass in. I need a way to reference every item, so I'm just going to do item, and I'm also going to pass in a count. Right. So that way, what I can actually do is I can say if count is not equal to remove value, then I can return item. All right, so let's dissect this a little bit, right? So with remove value, I'm finding the index of the value of the, I'm finding the index value of the item that I want to remove. Then I'm going to dive into a quick filter. So I'm saying, hey, let's filter out the item at this particular index value. All right. So if the index value and the count are equal, then I don't want that item part of my array anymore. I want to filter it out. For all items where the count is not equal to the index value, um, then I want it to continue to be part of my array. So essentially, I want to filter out. I want to filter out the item at the index value that I have found here. And I want everything else to continue to be part of my array. All right. So now what I can then do is, since I've removed an item, I can reset local storage. So I can do local storage dots. Let's do set item to do. And let's go ahead and, just JSON.stringify, our array again. So my to-dos. All right. And let's see if that accomplishes what we're hoping. All right, so let's refresh. So let's create some items. So walk the dog, fold the laundry, wash the dishes. All right, so we have 3 items. We go to local storage. There our items are: walk the dog, fold the laundry, wash the dishes. Right. This has persistence. Right. We have this data saved in local storage. When I hit delete, I don't want it to be here anymore. All right, so let's try it out. And there we go. Now in local storage, I have walk the dog, fold the laundry. I hit delete again, and now only walk the dog is left in local storage. And if I hit delete again, I'm left with an empty array. Right. One last thing, and then thank you for being so attentive and patient. Let's do one last thing. If I have items in local storage, right, then it only makes sense that those items are loaded whenever I first visit my to-do list, right? That's the whole point of persistence, right? So whenever my page loads, the first thing that I want to do is I want to check and see if the items I have anything in local storage, right? So let's do that. And the way that we do that is yet another event listener. So let's do document, docs, add event listener. Whoops. Add event listener. We're adding event listener to the document, the whole document. The event that we're specifically listening to is DOM content loaded. Now read what this says, right? It appends an event listener, blah, blah, blah. Where's it at? Is it going to hover? Okay, come on now. Okay, it doesn't want to hover. So basically, what this says is, once the DOM has been rendered, our content's been loaded. I think basic content, not to include CSS or the JavaScripts, right? Once this has been loaded, so the initial structure has been loaded, then this is an event that triggers, right? So what do we want to do with this event? Well, specifically what we want to do with the event is we want to look and see if we have anything in local storage. And if we do have something in local storage, then we want to go ahead and create our LI items and put them in our list, like we did here. All right. Now, all right. So let's do this. First, in order to get item, so we can do get item and specifically to do. All right. We just get that out of local storage. Right. The nice thing about get item, right, then it's null, if there's no to do there. So no harm, no foul. Right. So what we can do is actually we this is gonna be kind of redundant. I would normally separate this out into a different function because what we're actually going to do is going to be a little bit redundant. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to power through, right? So let's do to-do list, equal, document dot get elements by ID, and let's get our to-do list again. We already did this up top. I know it's redundant. Anytime you have redundant code, you should revisit it. But we're running out of time here. So, whenever you do your version of it, then make sure you're eliminating your redundant code. All right. So we have our to-do list, and what we're going to actually do, we're going to say if. All right, actually, let's set this equal to a variable. Call it my list. Right? So we're going to say if my list. What does that mean? Well, whenever we go to local storage and we go get item, then we're gonna look for the item called to do. Right? Now with get item, if that doesn't exist, then it's going to return null. So we can just do a simple check. We can say if my list, right? Then we go ahead and we start creating our LIs. Right? Now, if there's no to do and this returns null, right? Then this is not a true statement. right? So what follows, what is going to be, what's in between our actual code block is we're not going to run it because if this is null, if we don't get the item out of local storage, or it's going to my list is going to contain a null value, which means that this is a false statement. So we're not going to do what's between the code block. We'll only do what's between the code block if we successfully get back a to-do list. And so what are we going to do, right? Well, first thing that we need to do is we need to, if the to-do list it does exist, we need to do we need to do the following, right? We need to let's create let's let's call it to do items, right? And we're going to parse our list. So we're going to do JSON.parse, right? And what are we going to parse? We're going to parse my list, right? So now the data is is back in an array. We can use it. It's not in JSON format anymore. It's in a format that we can actually use, right? What we then are going to do is we're going to go ahead and set my to-dos, which is the array at the top. And let's go ahead and set it equal to do items. Why do we want to do this? Well, whenever we go and we start adding more stuff to our array, we want to make sure we're pushing to my to-dos, right? So we want to make sure that the stuff we got from local storage is already part of the array. So as we push to it, then we're only adding items to it. All right. So we set my to-dos equal to do items, right? So now let's do this. Let's do to do items, and let's do a for each. Oops. Let's just do for each like this. Sorry. And let's call it like item. I like item better than element. It's just shorter, right? So what are we going to do here? Well, this is where the redundant code comes in, because we're going to do all of this. Except we don't really need to reset the to-do value. And there is one other place we did need to reset the to-do value. So let's do to-do input.value, and let's reset that. Because if someone types in something incorrect, then we might as well reset it for them. So there's something that I forgot to do. But back to it, we're going to take in our to-do list from local storage. We're going to parse the contents, put it put it in a form that we can actually use, right? Then for each of those items, because this should return an array, right? For each item in the array, what we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and create that li item. We're going to give it, the value. This is the part that we actually need to update. It's going to be item, right? And we still want to create our button. We still want to add in our event listener, and we still want to add in our styling classes, and we still want to append to our child. All right. So let's test this out. This should be the last thing. All right. So let's do walk the dog. Let's do the dishes, and let's do I don't know, fold the laundry. All right. Now notice we have it all in local storage, right? I'm gonna add one more, learn JavaScripts, right? All right, we're going to delete that one because we have been learning JavaScript. So walk the dog, do the dishes, and fold laundry. If I hit refresh, it should grab this out of local storage, and my new list should have these items on it. All right, so refresh, and there they are. They're still there. Walk the dog, do the dishes, fold the laundry. All right. To prove it to you, let's comment this event listener out one more time. All right. And now let's refresh. And you see that the items are gone, even though they're saved in local storage. So if we uncomment our code back out, right? Whoops. And we hit refresh, then we now see that everything's there and it's great. All right. It's pulling directly from our local storage. All right. So that should be, so what have we accomplished? We have a to-do list. It has a built-in validation, right? We can mark items off without deleting them. We have a nice little hover effect. We have functionality with our delete button. Our to-do items are saved into local storage. Local storage updates as we delete items. And as we refresh, right? Whenever we refresh, if there is a to-do list in local storage, then it will pull those items in and we can continue adding to them. All right. Now check this out. If I delete, refresh, there's nothing to pull from. We have nothing in local storage. So I can actually start over. All right. I don't know. Watch TV. All right. So hopefully you were able to follow along somewhat, if not review the video. But we created a to-do list, right? Where we take the input value, we add it to our list by creating a new li item. We have, nice little hover effects. We can cross items out. We can delete items, and we have persistence with local storage that will load when we refresh the page. All right. So that is the end of the demo. I'm glad that the demo guys were actually kind tonight. So with that, are there any questions? Any questions at all? I can actually leave the code up if you want me to. Let me actually, to make it easier on you, let me actually, if you're following this video, then feel free to pause it here. This is all the code. Now, again, there are some things that you're going to want to clean up. All right, here's index.html. So make sure to pause it here if you want to see everything. And lastly, here is style.css. All right, just in case you're watching on video, you need to pause it. All right, that is the end of the demo. Any questions on anything? Questions at all? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about the demo itself. It could just be questions in general. All right. So Edgar said no questions. Justin said thank you. Um, all right. Hey, if there aren't any questions, hopefully you learned a little bit, from this. Like, I had a ball, when they told me to do a to do list, you know, okay, yes. Um, yeah. So that's gonna take um Edgar says I couldn't follow the logic of the JavaScript too well, but the directions were straightforward. If you have you learned JavaScript yet? Like that portion will make a lot more sense once you get more comfortable, with JavaScript. So it just practice. If you're in a class and you're not quite there yet, then it'll come. But I enjoyed putting this demo together. I did want to spice it up a bit. I didn't want to do the traditional to-do list. I did want to give it persistence. I did go back and forth with what to do. At one point I was thinking about bringing in like document database, but I figured that would be a bridge too far. So I went with local storage. I figured that was like the happy medium. Um, and it worked out even better because we deal with local storage, whenever we learn JWTs. So it's local storage can be really handy, to store information. Um, and in this case, we're storing our to-do list. So I enjoyed putting this demo together. I try not to make it too crazy complex, but complex enough where you can, if you add it to your portfolio, you have something that's actually pretty cool. So feel free to rewatch this video, code along with me. Reach out to me if there's anything that you don't understand. If you're rewatching this video, if there's anything that you don't understand, then feel free to reach out to me. Or if you see, a better way of like, because some of this I did hand jam at the end. If you see like a better way of implementing the solution, let me know that too, because I'm always curious to know that too. Curious to see what everyone comes up with. But again, my name is Brent. Um, you know, um, it is 8:24. I didn't want to keep you too late, so have a great night. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or Slack if you have any questions. But take care.